He was a good mechanic, perhaps the best Sterling Automotive had ever seen, but his quiet dedication was a poor fit for the polished chrome and aggressive upselling that defined the high-end garage. Leo Miller believed in fixing things, in the elegant logic of a well-tuned engine and the simple honesty of a job done right. His manager, a man who wore his ambition like a tailored suit, believed only in profit margins. So when Leo chose compassion over company policy, performing a simple act of kindness for an elderly woman in distress, he was fired without a second thought. His manager, Mr. Sterling, sneered as he cast him out, confident in his decision. But he had no idea who he had just insulted. He never saw it coming. What happened the next day, when a pristine white sport utility vehicle rolled silently to a stop outside Leo's tiny rented house, would not only change the young mechanic's life forever, but would send shockwaves through the entire company, leaving everyone utterly speechless. It was an arrival that would prove, once and for all, that the true measure of a person is never what they wear or what they drive, but the character they reveal when no one is watching. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you. Sterling Automotive was less a garage and more a temple dedicated to the worship of wealth. Its floors were spotless, polished to a mirror shine that reflected the gleaming luxury cars of its clientele. The air didn't smell of oil and gasoline, but of expensive leather cleaner and the faint, citrusy scent of a bespoke air freshener. Customers were called clients, and they didn't wait in a dingy room with old magazines, but in a lounge with ergonomic chairs, artisanal coffee, and a wall-mounted television permanently tuned to a business news channel. In this environment, Leo Miller was an anomaly. His passion was for the vehicles themselves, not the status they represented. He found a deep satisfaction in diagnosing a complex engine problem or perfectly balancing a set of new tires. His standard-issue overalls, though clean, always bore the faint, honest stains of his craft, a stark contrast to the crisp, sterile uniforms of the service advisors. His hands, meticulous and steady in their work, had a permanent layer of grease etched into the lines of his palms that no amount of industrial soap could fully erase. He was quiet, observant, and preferred the company of a purring engine to the smooth, transactional chatter of the front office. His manager, Mr. Alistair Sterling, was the architect of this entire facade. He was a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes, a perfectly coiffed figure in a series of immaculate suits, each accented with his signature gold tie, a piece of metal he would straighten symbolically whenever he was about to assert his authority. He viewed cars not as machines to be cared for, but as opportunities to extract the maximum possible revenue from their owners. He had once told Leo during a performance review, "We are not in the business of fixing cars, Miller. We are in the business of selling peace of mind to a certain class of people. And peace of mind is a premium product." Earlier that week, Leo had been reprimanded for not convincing a client to replace their entire braking system when only a change of pads was necessary. "You left thousands on the table, Leo," Sterling had said, his voice a low hiss of disappointment. "You need to start thinking about the bigger picture." For Leo, the bigger picture was simply keeping people safe on the road, but he knew arguing was pointless. He needed the job. It paid better than any other garage in town, and that pay was the only thing keeping a roof over his head. Into this carefully curated world of affluence and performance, a disruption arrived. It was not a sleek German sedan or a roaring Italian sports car, but a humble, 10-year-old domestic sedan, sputtering and rattling as it pulled into the pristine parking lot. The car's paint was faded, and a small dent adorned the rear bumper like a faded battle scar. From the driver's side emerged an elderly woman, her movements careful and deliberate. She wore a simple, clean cardigan over a floral print dress, her white hair neatly coiffed. Her name was Ilara Gable, and her face was etched with worry. She approached the gleaming glass doors of the service center, her handbag clutched tightly in her hands. Mr. Sterling was standing near the main desk, overseeing a transaction with a wealthy client, his posture radiating smug satisfaction. When that client departed, Mrs. Gable stepped forward hesitantly. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice soft but clear. Sterling turned, and his welcoming smile instantly faltered, replaced by a flicker of barely concealed annoyance. He gave her and her aging car a dismissive, top-to-bottom glance. "May I help you?" he asked, his tone clipped and impatient. "Yes, I hope so," she said, her anxiety palpable. "My front tire is very low, and it feels wobbly when I drive. I'm afraid it's not safe. I think I need a new one." Sterling let out a small, patronizing sigh. He strode to the window, peered out at her car with an expression of profound distaste, and then turned back. "A new one?" he echoed, as if the concept were absurd. "Madam, at Sterling Automotive, we do not replace single tires. It compromises the vehicle's balance and performance. We only replace tires in full sets of 4. For your vehicle, the mandatory Platinum package, which includes 4 of our premium all-season radials, a full digital alignment, and a complimentary fluid check, comes to $950. Mrs. Gable's face fell. The color drained from her cheeks. $950? She whispered, the words catching in her throat. "Oh my, I can't possibly afford that. I'm on a fixed income. I was just hoping for a safe, used tire, something to get me by." The moment she said the words, used tire, Sterling's professional veneer cracked completely, revealing the raw contempt beneath. He chuckled, a short, ugly sound. "Madam," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "this is a premier automotive service center. This is for a certain class of people. We do not deal in used parts or just getting by. Perhaps a local junkyard would be more suited to your needs." He didn't even try to soften the blow. He simply turned his back on her, a gesture of ultimate dismissal, and began tidying a stack of brochures on the counter, leaving the elderly woman standing alone in the center of the opulent lobby, her face a mask of shock and humiliation. From the wide opening of the garage bay, Leo had seen and heard the entire excruciating exchange. A hot surge of anger, sharp and righteous, washed over him. He saw the new apprentice, a young man named Sam, look down at his shoes, his face flushed with second-hand embarrassment for the poor woman. He saw the other service advisors studiously avoid looking in her direction. It was a calculated, collective cruelty, and Leo could not stand for it. He wiped his hands on a red rag, tucking it into his back pocket, and took a deep, steadying breath. As Mrs. Gable, her shoulders slumped in defeat, turned to walk away from the counter and out of the building, Leo stepped out of the shadows of the bay and into the bright light of the showroom. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice calm and even. She stopped and turned, surprised. "I can help you with that." Mr. Sterling's head snapped up, his eyes narrowed into furious slits. "Miller, get back in the bay," he commanded, his voice low and menacing. Leo ignored him completely, his focus entirely on the woman. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Let me take a look. I'm sure we can find something to make it safe for you." He walked with her out to her car, leaving a thunderstruck Sterling in his wake. Kneeling down, Leo inspected the tire. The tread was worn dangerously thin, down to the wear bars, and a small bulge was beginning to form on the sidewall. It was a blowout waiting to happen. "You were right to be worried," he said gently. "This isn't safe at all." He then remembered a set of tires he had taken off a luxury sedan just the day before. The owner had insisted on getting brand new ones, even though the existing set had fewer than 5,000 miles on them. They were practically new and, per Sterling's wasteful policy, were slated to be sent to the recycler. "Wait right here," he told her. Ignoring Sterling, who was now marching purposefully towards them across the lot, Leo went to the back of the shop, retrieved one of the nearly new tires, and brought it to the service bay's mounting machine. By the time Sterling arrived, his face a thunderous mask of fury, Leo was already breaking the bead on Mrs. Gable's old wheel. "What in God's name do you think you are doing, Miller?" Sterling's voice was a barely controlled roar. He was conscious of the other clients in the lounge, now watching the unfolding drama with interest. "This is not a charity. That is company property you are handling." He publicly berated Leo, his voice rising in volume with each word, ensuring everyone could hear. "You are actively undermining my authority and devaluing our brand. You are embarrassing this establishment. People like her do not belong here, and quite frankly, an employee with your mentality doesn't belong here either." The confrontation had reached its peak, a tableau of simmering class tension on the polished asphalt of the Sterling Automotive lot. Leo, still kneeling by the tire machine, looked up at his enraged manager. He did not raise his voice. He did not flinch. His calmness seemed only to fuel Sterling's fire. "I'm making sure this woman can drive home safely, Mr. Sterling," Leo stated, his words simple and direct. "It's the right thing to do. That tire was a danger to her and to everyone else on the road." Sterling's face, already flushed with anger, deepened to a shade of mottled purple. The veins on his temple pulsed. The carefully constructed image of a sophisticated businessman was gone, replaced by a petty tyrant losing control. "The right thing to do?" He spat, the words laced with venom. "The right thing to do is to protect our bottom line, to maintain our standards. You have willfully disobeyed a direct order, you have stolen company property, and you have humiliated me in front of my clients." He jabbed a finger toward the lounge, where several well-dressed customers were indeed peering out the window. "You're finished, Miller. You are fired. Effective immediately. Pack up your tools and get off my property. Now." Mrs. Gable, who had been watching with a horrified expression, stepped forward. "Please," she implored, her voice trembling. "This is my fault. Please don't fire him. He was only trying to be kind." Sterling shot her a look of pure loathing. "Madam, this is no longer your concern." He then turned his back on her, focusing his glare back on Leo. But Leo was no longer looking at him. He was focused on his task. With methodical precision, he mounted the new, safe tire onto the old rim, inflated it to the correct pressure, and balanced it perfectly on the machine. He then walked it out to her car and began to tighten the lug nuts in the proper star pattern. Only when the job was done, when the car was safe, did he stand up. He gave Mrs. Gable a small, sad smile. "Drive safe now," he said quietly. He then turned and walked toward the garage to collect his things. The other mechanics, who had been watching from a distance, suddenly found reasons to be busy elsewhere, avoiding his gaze out of fear or shame. Only Sam, the young apprentice, approached him. As Leo placed his well-worn tools into his metal toolbox, Sam came over and quietly helped him latch the lid. "That was a good thing you did, Leo," he whispered, his voice thick with sincerity. "Thank you, Sam," Leo replied, appreciating the small gesture of solidarity more than the boy could know. With his toolbox in one hand, Leo walked out of Sterling Automotive for the last time, the weight of his sudden unemployment a heavy, sinking stone in his gut. The walk home was a blur. The familiar streets of his neighborhood seemed foreign, the sounds of the city muffled by the roaring in his own head. The heavy toolbox, usually a symbol of his livelihood and skill, now felt like an anchor dragging him down. Despair, cold and sharp, began to prick at the edges of his initial righteous anger. He lived in a small, rented bungalow on a quiet street, a modest but tidy place he had been proud to afford. As he placed his toolbox by the door, the reality of his situation crashed down on him. The rent was due in a week. He had some savings, but not enough to last more than a month or two. How would he find another job? The thought of going back to one of the grimy, low-paying garages on the other side of town made his heart sink. He had worked so hard to get to a place like Sterling Automotive, a place that, for all its flaws, had the best equipment and paid a wage that allowed for a sliver of security. He slumped onto his worn couch, replaying the scene with Mr. Sterling over and over in his mind. Had he been foolish? Had his pride and his principles cost him everything? A part of him, the practical, fearful part, screamed that he should have just kept his head down, ignored the old woman, and collected his paycheck. He could have minded his own business. But another, deeper part of him knew he couldn't have. He wouldn't have been able to live with himself, knowing he let that woman drive away on a ticking time bomb of a tire, just to protect a profit margin. The conflict warred within him, a turbulent sea of moral conviction and crippling anxiety. He felt a profound sense of injustice, not just for himself, but for Mrs. Gable and for anyone else who had ever been judged and dismissed based on their appearance or the age of their car. Despite the fear, a quiet, stubborn sense of pride began to take root. He hadn't backed down. He hadn't compromised his core beliefs. He had chosen kindness over cruelty, safety over sales. He spent the rest of the evening scrolling through online job boards on his phone, the glow of the screen illuminating his worried face. The listings were sparse and uninspiring. His stomach churned. He eventually drifted into a troubled, fitful sleep, the future a vast and uncertain fog. He was woken not by his alarm clock, but by a low, powerful hum, a sound so smooth and refined it seemed utterly alien to his quiet, working-class street. Leo sat up in bed, groggy and disoriented. The morning sun was just beginning to filter through his blinds. He swung his legs out of bed and walked to the front window, peeling back a slat to peer outside. What he saw made him blink. Certain he was still dreaming. Parked directly in front of his small, weathered porch was a magnificent, gleaming white sport utility vehicle. It was a brand new, top-of-the-line model, the kind of vehicle that cost more than his house was worth, the kind of vehicle he had only ever worked on in the pristine bays of Sterling Automotive. Its paint was a brilliant, pearlescent white that seemed to gather and amplify the morning light. As he stared, dumbfounded, a man in a crisp black chauffeur's uniform emerged from the driver's side. The man moved with an air of professional calm, walking around to the rear passenger door and opening it with a graceful, practiced motion. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single, elegant leather shoe appeared, followed by a tailored trouser leg. Out of the luxurious interior of the SUV stepped Mrs. Elara Gable. But this was not the flustered, anxious woman from the garage. She was transformed. Today, she wore an exquisitely tailored navy blue business suit, the kind that spoke of boardrooms and executive decisions. Her white hair was styled perfectly, and a string of understated but clearly valuable pearls graced her neck. She was no longer the worried woman clutching her handbag. She carried a slim leather portfolio and an aura of quiet, unshakable authority. The gentle, grandmotherly figure was gone, replaced by a woman of immense presence and power. She looked up, her gaze meeting Leo's through the blinds, and offered him a small, knowing smile. She was the vindicator, and she had arrived. Leo, still in his t-shirt and sleep pants, watched in stunned silence as the woman he knew as Mrs. Gable approached his front door. He quickly pulled on a pair of jeans, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The doorbell chimed, a polite, clear sound that echoed through his small house. He took a breath and opened the door. There she stood, looking even more impressive up close. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice the same soft tone as yesterday, yet now it carried an undeniable weight of command. "May I have a moment of your time? My name is Elara Gable." Leo could only nod, stepping back to let her in. She entered his humble living room and looked around, not with judgment, but with a polite, observant curiosity. "Please, don't feel the need to entertain me," she said kindly, sensing his unease. "I am the one who has imposed on you." She then got straight to the point. "What I saw yesterday at Sterling Automotive," she began, her expression turning serious, "was one of the most disgraceful things I have witnessed in a very long time. Your former manager's behavior was appalling. Your behavior, on the other hand, was honorable." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You see, Mr. Miller, Sterling Automotive is not Mr. Sterling's company. It's my company. My late husband and I founded it over 40 years ago on a very simple principle: honest, quality service for everyone. We built it from a single garage into a national franchise based on that trust. Periodically, I like to visit our locations unannounced, dressed simply, driving an old car, to see if those principles are still being upheld. It is a test of sorts. Yesterday, your branch failed that test spectacularly. But you, Leo, you passed." Leo was speechless. His mind struggled to process the information. The kindly old woman he had helped was the owner of the entire chain, the founder. She saw the bewilderment on his face and smiled gently. "I am not here just to thank you, Leo. I am here to make you an offer. I am creating a new position within the corporate structure, a position I believe you are uniquely qualified for. I want you to become the first ever national head of service integrity." The words hung in the air of his small living room, seeming to expand to fill the space. National Head of Service Integrity. It sounded impossibly grand, a title from another world. Leo stared at her, trying to find a joke in her earnest expression, but there was none. "Ma'am? Mrs. Gable? I don't know what to say," he stammered. "I'm a mechanic. I fix cars. I don't know anything about corporate positions." Elara Gable's smile widened slightly. "You know everything that matters, Leo. You know the difference between right and wrong. You have integrity, a quality that seems to be in short supply at my company these days. You value people over profit. That is precisely what I need. I don't need another executive who can read a spreadsheet. I have plenty of those. I need someone with character. I need a conscience for this company, and I believe that is you." She explained the role she envisioned. He would not be chained to a desk. He would travel, as she did, to branches across the country. He would be responsible for developing and implementing new training programs focused on ethical service, customer dignity, and quality workmanship. He would have the authority to reform the company's policies, to strip away the predatory practices that had crept in under managers like Sterling. She wanted him to create a new initiative, which she had already decided to call the Gable Community Care Program, designed to provide affordable, essential automotive services to those in need, using quality, certified used parts, the very thing he had done for her. "I want you to institutionalize your act of kindness," she said, her voice filled with passion. "As for compensation," she continued, opening the leather portfolio she carried, "I am prepared to offer you a starting salary that is 5 times what Mr. Sterling was paying you, along with a full benefits package, a company car a bit newer than mine," she added with a twinkle in her eye, "and a relocation allowance should you need it, though you would be welcome to base your operations right here in your hometown." Leo's head was spinning. It was a life-altering, absurdly generous offer born from a single, simple decision to help someone. He had lost his job for an act of decency, and now, because of that same act, he was being offered the world. He looked at his own calloused hands, hands that knew the feel of grease and steel, and then at the powerful, elegant woman sitting on his worn-out couch. He finally found his voice. I accept," he said, the words feeling inadequate but filled with a profound sense of purpose. "Good," Ilara Gable said, a look of immense satisfaction on her face. "Then let's not waste any time. Our first order of business is a visit to your old workplace. I believe we have a termination to oversee and a promotion to announce." The drive back to Sterling Automotive was surreal. Leo sat in the plush leather passenger seat of the white SUV, the engine a mere whisper as they glided through traffic. He was still wearing his jeans and a plain t-shirt, a stark contrast to the chauffeur in front of him and the powerful woman by his side. As they pulled into the familiar, pristine lot, he felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. The place represented his humiliation, the site of his lowest professional moment. But as they parked directly in front of the main entrance, in a spot reserved for VIP clients, he felt a new feeling blossoming alongside the anxiety, a sense of impending justice. Ilara Gable turned to him. "Are you ready, Leo?" she asked. He nodded, taking a deep breath. "I am." They got out of the vehicle and walked towards the gleaming glass doors. As they entered, the receptionist at the front desk looked up, her eyes widening first at the sight of Leo, then at the impeccably dressed woman with him. Inside the lounge, several service advisors, including the ones who had watched him get fired, stopped their conversations and stared. The drama from yesterday was still fresh, and Leo's return was an unexpected plot twist. From his glass-walled office, Mr. Sterling saw him. A flash of pure rage crossed his face. He stormed out of his office, his gold tie glinting under the showroom lights. "Miller!" he bellowed, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "I thought I made myself perfectly clear yesterday. You are trespassing. I told you never to show your face in here again. Get out before I call the police." He was marching towards them, his face red and his finger pointed accusingly at Leo. He had not yet truly registered the woman standing beside him. He was too consumed by his own fury and arrogance. Leo stood his ground, his heart hammering, but he remained silent, deferring to the true power in the room. Ilara Gable took one small, deliberate step forward, positioning herself slightly in front of Leo. Her movement was slight, but it was enough to finally draw Sterling's full, enraged attention. "That will not be necessary, Mr. Sterling," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost conversational, yet it cut through his tirade like a shard of ice, stopping him dead in his tracks about 10 feet away. A look of confusion washed over his face. He stared at her, his brain trying to place the familiar-looking woman in the context of this unexpected confrontation. He saw the expensive suit, the pearls, the air of absolute command. The gears in his mind began to turn, connecting this powerful figure with the dismissed, flustered old woman from the day before. His eyes widened. The blood drained from his face, leaving his skin a sickly, pale gray. His jaw went slack. Mrs. Gable? He stammered, the name a choked whisper. The arrogance and fury vanished in an instant, replaced by a wave of pure, undiluted terror. He looked from her to Leo and back again, his mind frantically trying to calculate the magnitude of his catastrophic misjudgment. "You remember me then," Ilara said, her tone devoid of any warmth. "Excellent. It saves us some time." She gestured towards Leo. "I am here today to inform you of a change in management. This is Leo Miller. As of this morning, he is the new National Head of Service Integrity for Sterling Automotive. He answers directly to me." The other employees, who had been watching the scene with rapt attention, gasped audibly. Sam, the young apprentice, who was sweeping the floor nearby, simply stopped and stared, a slow smile spreading across his face. Sterling looked as if he had been physically struck. He swayed slightly on his feet. "National head?" he sputtered, unable to comprehend the words. "But I fired him. He gave away company property. He was insubordinate." Ilara's eyes were like chips of granite. "No, Mr. Sterling. He upheld the company's core principles. You, on the other hand, have violated them at every turn. You have fostered a culture of predatory sales tactics. You have engaged in price gouging, and you have treated a customer and a founder of this company with the kind of callous disrespect that I will not tolerate. It is you who is insubordinate to the values that this company was built on." Sterling's carefully constructed world was shattering around him, and the desperation was plain on his face. He started to babble, the words tumbling out in a panicked rush. "Mrs. Gable, I assure you, it was a misunderstanding. A terrible misunderstanding. Had I known who you were, I can explain everything. The numbers for this branch are excellent. We are the most profitable in the region." He was pleading now, his voice shrill, the gold tie that was once his symbol of authority now looking like a garish noose. Ilara Gable held up a hand, silencing him instantly. "Your numbers," she said with cold precision, "are a monument to your greed, not your success. You have achieved them by cheating our customers and tarnishing our name. You speak of profit, but you have no concept of value. You saw a woman in need and chose to humiliate her rather than help her. You saw an employee with integrity and chose to fire him rather than reward him. You have failed, Mr. Sterling. Not just as a manager, but as a human being." Each word was a nail in the coffin of his career. She turned her head slightly to address the assembled staff, who were listening with a mixture of fear and awe. "Let this be a lesson to everyone. Sterling Automotive is not merely a business. It is a promise to our customers. A promise of safety, honesty, and dignity. Mr. Sterling broke that promise." She then turned her gaze back to the terrified man. "Therefore, it is my duty to inform you that your employment with this company is terminated, effective immediately. Your severance will be the same one you offered Mr. Miller yesterday. Nothing. Please clear out your desk. Security will escort you from the premises." She pointed towards his glass office. The finality in her voice was absolute. For the second time in as many days, a public firing had taken place on the floor of the showroom. But this time, it felt not like an act of cruelty, but one of perfect, poetic justice. Sterling stood frozen for a moment longer, his face a mask of disbelief and ruin, before turning and walking stiffly toward his office on legs that barely seemed to hold him. With Sterling's humiliating exit underway, a palpable tension hung in the air. The remaining staff stood frozen, uncertain of their own fates. Ilara Gable then turned her attention to them, her expression softening slightly, but still commanding respect. "My name is Ilara Gable," she announced, her voice resonating through the silent showroom. "As I told Mr. Sterling, I founded this company with my husband, Charles. We started with one garage and one core belief, that everyone deserves a safe vehicle and honest service. What I have seen here is a betrayal of that belief. But that betrayal ends today." Her eyes scanned the faces of the employees, finally landing on Sam, the young apprentice who was still holding his broom, looking on with wide eyes. "Young man," she said, her voice kind, "what is your name?" Sam swallowed hard. "Sam, ma'am," he replied. "Samwell." Ilara smiled warmly. "Samwell, I saw you yesterday. I saw you watch what happened. I saw the look on your face. You were ashamed of your manager's behavior, were you not? Sam nodded shyly. Yes, ma'am. It was wrong. And when Mr. Miller was fired, she continued, you were the only one who went to him, the only one who offered him a word of support. Sam blushed, looking down at his feet. He was just being decent, he mumbled. It's what anyone should have done. Precisely, Ilara said approvingly. Decency. That is what has been missing here. She then turned to Leo. Leo, as your first act as head of service integrity, I believe a promotion is in order. What do you think? Leo, who was just beginning to process the whirlwind of events, looked at Sam's earnest, hopeful face and felt a surge of clarity. This was his chance not just to punish the bad, but to reward the good. I agree, Leo said, his voice gaining confidence. Sam, I'd like to offer you the position of service floor manager for this branch. Effective immediately. You'll report directly to me. Your job will be to ensure that every car is fixed properly, and every customer is treated with the respect they deserve. Sam's jaw dropped. Me? Manager? But I'm just an apprentice. You have more managerial sense in your little finger than Mr. Sterling had in his entire body, Ilara stated firmly. You have character. We can teach you the rest. With the new management structure in place, Leo addressed the rest of the stunned staff. He stood before them, not as an executive in a suit, but as one of their own, still in his simple clothes from that morning. He didn't speak of revenge or retribution. His tone was not triumphant. It was earnest and firm. My name is Leo Miller, and as Mrs. Gable said, I'm in charge of service integrity now. That starts right here, right now. The way we've been doing business is going to change. From this moment on, we are no longer in the business of upselling. We are in the business of serving. Our goal is not to hit a sales target. It is to ensure every person who drives out of this bay does so in a vehicle that is as safe as we can possibly make it. He outlined his vision, the one born from his conversation with Ilara just an hour earlier. He spoke of the new Gable Community Care Program, explaining how they would now source and certify quality used parts to provide affordable options for those on fixed incomes or facing financial hardship. He announced a complete overhaul of the commission structure. You will no longer be rewarded for how much you sell, he declared. You will be rewarded for your diagnostic accuracy, for the quality of your repairs, and for positive customer feedback. We are going to reward honesty, not aggression. He could see the mix of skepticism and hope on their faces. They were used to Sterling's high-pressure environment. This new way was foreign. I know this is a big change, he conceded, but I promise you this. We will build something to be proud of. A place where our skills are respected and our customers trust us. A place where a woman like Mrs. Rainting Gable can pull in with an old car and receive the same dignity and care as someone in a brand new luxury vehicle. That is the new Sterling Automotive. He then rolled up his sleeves, a gesture so natural and familiar that it immediately broke the tension. Now, he said, looking towards the service bays, I saw a car on the lift with a tricky transmission issue on my way out yesterday. Let's get to work. In that moment, he was not just their boss, he was their leader. The transformation of the flagship Sterling Automotive branch began immediately and served as the pilot program for the nationwide overhaul to come. Leo, true to his word, spent more time on the garage floor than in Sterling's old office. The first thing he did was tear down the glass walls of the manager's office, replacing them with an open-concept workspace that encouraged communication between the service advisors and the technicians. He implemented a rigorous new training program, designed by him and overseen by the newly promoted and incredibly diligent Sam. The program had two key modules: the art of the honest diagnostic and dignity in service. Technicians were retrained to prioritize necessary repairs and to clearly explain to customers the difference between critical safety issues and optional maintenance. Service advisors were taught to listen, to empathize, and to present options without pressure. The predatory Platinum package was abolished overnight. In its place was a clear, itemized menu of services with transparent pricing. The Gable Community Care Program was an even more radical change. Leo established a partnership with a national auto parts recycler to source high-quality, low-mileage components from written-off vehicles. These parts were then rigorously tested and certified by his best technicians, allowing them to offer safe, reliable repairs at a fraction of the cost of new parts. The first recipient of the program was a single mother, whose minivan needed a new alternator, a repair she had been putting off for months. The relief and gratitude on her face when she was presented with a bill that was 70% less than she had been quoted elsewhere became a new kind of currency in the shop, more valuable than Sterling's gold tie had ever been. Word of the changes began to spread through the community like wildfire. At first, people were skeptical. A high-end garage offering fair prices and honest service sounded too good to be true. But slowly, the stories began to accumulate. A college student was praised for his car's good condition and sent on his way with a free tire pressure check instead of a list of phantom problems. An elderly couple had a complex electrical issue diagnosed and fixed for the simple cost of 1 hour's labor after another shop had told them they needed a whole new wiring harness. The clientele began to shift, while the luxury car owners still came. Drawn by the unparalleled technical skill that Leo championed, they were now joined by teachers, nurses, construction workers, and retirees. The lounge, once a sterile waiting room for the wealthy, became a genuine community space where people from all walks of life chatted over coffee. The branch's revenue did dip in the first quarter, a fact that caused some concern at the corporate headquarters, but Leo and Alara held their nerve. By the second quarter, something remarkable happened. The volume of customers had tripled. The bays were constantly full, not with massive, one-time upsells, but with a steady stream of loyal, repeat customers who trusted the service they were receiving. They were doing more business than ever before because they had earned the most valuable commodity of all, the community's trust. The branch's overall profit by the end of the second quarter had surpassed even Sterling's most lucrative, greed-fueled months. The model was a resounding success, proving Ilara's founding principle that honesty was not just good ethics, it was good business. This success became the blueprint for the national rollout, with Leo at the forefront, traveling the country to transform each Sterling Automotive branch into a beacon of service and integrity. About a year after the dramatic upheaval, a man walked into a small, independent garage on the industrial side of town. He wore a simple, grease-stained uniform. He was older, thinner than he used to be, and the arrogant swagger in his step was gone, replaced by a quiet weariness. It was Alistair Sterling. After being fired, his reputation in the high-end automotive world was destroyed. No luxury dealership would touch him. With his finances in ruin, he had been forced to take the only job he could find, as a junior service writer at a gritty, no-frills repair shop. It was a humbling, crushing fall from grace. That afternoon, an old, beat-up pickup truck rattled into the garage. A young man, barely out of his teens, got out and explained to Sterling that his brakes were making a terrible grinding noise. He was a student at the local community college and had almost no money. Sterling, a year ago, would have seen him as a waste of time. But today, something was different. He had spent a year listening to the stories of ordinary people, their struggles, their worries about making ends meet. He put the truck on the lift and saw that the brake pads were worn down to the metal, scoring the rotors. It was a dangerous, urgent repair. The young man's face fell when he heard the news, admitting he couldn't afford it. The old Sterling would have shrugged and sent him on his way. But the new Sterling, the humbled Sterling, hesitated. He thought of Leo Miller. He thought of Alara Gable. He went to his boss and quietly arranged to have the job done at cost, with Sterling himself foregoing his own commission on the sale. He even stayed late, unpaid, to help the mechanic finish the job so the student could get to his evening class. It wasn't a grand gesture. No one was there to witness it or reward him for it. It was a simple, quiet act of decency. It was a sign that, perhaps, the lesson had finally been learned. 2 years after he had been fired for fixing a single tire, Leo Miller stood in the newly renovated flagship branch. It had been officially renamed Gable Miller Automotive, a change Ilara had insisted upon. The brand was now synonymous with trust and was more successful than ever. Leo was a respected executive, but he had never traded his overalls for a suit. He still spent at least 1 day a week on the floor of a garage somewhere in the country, his hands dirty, listening to engines and talking to mechanics. He had found a way to be a leader without losing the part of himself that simply loved to fix things. He was happy, fulfilled in a way he never could have been just chasing a paycheck. The company was thriving, a testament to the idea that a business could be both profitable and compassionate. The community care program he had started had now helped thousands of people across the country. preventing accidents and easing financial burdens. He looked across the bustling, cheerful showroom, a place that now welcomed everyone. He saw Sam, now a confident and capable regional manager, patiently explaining a repair to an elderly customer. He saw a diverse group of people from all walks of life, trusting his employees with their safety. On the main wall of the showroom, where Sterling's ostentatious Salesman of the Month plaque used to hang, there was now a simple, elegant bronze plaque. It bore the company's new motto, the words that defined their mission, the words that had changed everything. It read, "Dignity in every detail." It was a promise kept, a principle restored, and a legacy secured for a company that had rediscovered its soul. All because one person chose to do the right thing when it would have been easier to do nothing at all. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Have you ever felt dismissed or looked down upon simply because of the clothes you wore or the car you drove? Leo's story is a powerful reminder that true worth is not measured in dollars or displayed in luxury goods. It resides in the quiet corners of our character, in the compassion we show when others are in need, and in the integrity we maintain even when it comes at a personal cost. Think about the moment Mr. Sterling chose to humiliate Mrs. Gable, and then think about the moment Leo chose to help her. Both men made a choice. One chose arrogance, the other chose kindness. One choice led to ruin, the other led to a revolution of decency. What would you have done in that situation? Would you have stayed silent, like the other employees, afraid to risk your own security? Or would you have stepped forward, like Leo, guided by the simple, powerful conviction to do the right thing? Share your own experiences in the comments below. Tell us about a time you witnessed an act of kindness, or a time you were treated with unexpected dignity. These stories matter. They remind us that we have the power to shape our world through our daily choices. Remember that a single, selfless act can set in motion a chain of events you could never predict. If this story of justice and integrity moved you, please share it with others who might need this message of hope. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspirational stories that celebrate the best of the human spirit, because you truly never know who you might be helping. Kindness is a language everyone understands, and integrity is a currency that will never, ever lose its value. Treat everyone with respect. You may just be entertaining an angel, or in this case, the founder of the entire company.